Running Sentences presents Tangled in a Criminal World. Part 11. A Maze of a Castle Dungeon. Escape or finding the royals. It is not an easy thing to decide to do, as Micha and Brie find horror awaits them. This story is written and narrated by Michael Hunnery. It is a work of fiction, so any names, characters, businesses, events, and situations within this story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, situations, characters, businesses, events, and/or fictional businesses, characters, events, and so on is purely coincidental. Copyright 2024, Michael Hunnery. All rights reserved. With careful steps, Brie and Micha both stepped into this room, a light cast from Mika's hand giving them a better view of this bloody chamber that was a room slicked with blood and gore that went on for quite a while beyond their sight. Brie? No, I don't know what this place is if that's what you're asking. Okay. So are we still in the dungeon from before then? Well, if I had to guess, yes. Micha moved his shoe, trying to pick it up out of the sticky substance, but it didn't feel like it wanted to move. He got it to come up, but grimaced as he moved about. The floor was slippery and sticky, and it just didn't feel right as he stepped down again. Where do we go from here, then, since you know some of this place around here, I guess? Forward. That's the only direction we have right now. With a nod, Micha sent a little bit of a fire from his hand spiraling forward in front of them. It went out 20 or so feet, showing much of the same they'd seen before, but lighting it up. It was a simple cavern room, slick with blood all over the place. Any ideas where this might lead to? Well, Micha, torture chambers, maybe. Great, and would the royalty hide out here, or in their secret chambers, or where would they hide? I don't know, it's difficult to say, but I guess down here because everyone would expect them to be in the secret area. With a sigh, Micha looked back into the dark space ahead of them. Onward we go, then, he said. Their journey took them deeper into the space, which came to an end at a wall with a funnel-like area placed against the ground that only went downwards. Here, though, that blood-like substance that had made their trek annoying was not as much here, or at least the sticky steps and slippery feeling of it all seemed to disappear a bit. They couldn't keep things simple, could they? Why does it go down further? Draining away the torture things? I don't know. People, maybe? I'm not sure. I never saw this place during my little tour of this area, Brie said with a sigh. Micha was reminded that she'd seen this area, but not really seen it, which was not all that helpful. Well, there is no way out of here other than back the way we came, so, he said, looking around. They both instinctively looked back that way. It was dark, and nothing about it welcoming. Micha turned to the funnel space that was large enough for a person to drop through, and sent a flame in its direction. The space, though, curved away once after a foot, and then obscured anything from being seen. Forward or backwards? What's your choice, Micha? I feel safer going back, but I'm not sure I saw a way out of here from that direction, and I'm really relying on your sense of direction down here, he said to her with a glance back at the hole. It seems that something wants us to go down now. What do you mean by that, Brie? Please explain. I have a feeling of some sort that there's something down there that wants us to go down. Now, I don't know what it is, nor do I think it is related to Lord Vance or Quad. Or maybe it may be. But it's just this weird sensation pulling on me. Great. down a giant slide that doesn't look smooth enough to slide it on in the first place. Are you going first, or am I? And why am I even willing to do this? The grimace on Brie's face was more than enough to tell him he was going first. He took a breath of air, feeling the staleness enter his lungs, and then let it out. A question of if he would have to hold his breath as he went down, coming to him as he did this. Then he stepped forward and lowered down one of his feet into the hole to see if he could firmly step on it. The answer was no, as his foot slipped out from under him and twisting him about this way and that. He tried to grab at the lip of the circle in the funnel that made up the floor, but his hand missed that. And as a result, he felt himself twisting and turning until he was inside this funnel space, and everything was plunging into darkness. Well, he'd expected the tunnel space to be bleak, dark, and narrow. It was only two of those things. Micha was grateful that there was enough room for him to move about and sort himself out after slipping in here. His legs had been bent in an odd direction and felt like they wanted to be torn apart. But now with a bit of room, he managed to move so that he felt somewhat safer and his legs weren't doing the splits. Brie, did you come down here? Things were flying by, and even as he glanced backwards to try and see if the witch was following, it was difficult to get a read on things. The darkness of the space and the rush of things moving about made it hard for him to concentrate and listen, though he hoped for a response anyway. The sound of trickling water kept him company, and then he felt like he had nothing under him at all, a sign that he took to mean he was falling. With a heavy splash, Micha hit the water hard and felt himself going down and down. Everything was dark around him, and it was difficult to see one way or another, making up and down hard to figure out. A sudden surge, though, at his back pushed him, sending him back towards the surface. He still couldn't see much of anything, but there did appear to be a shape of something floating in the air above him as he broke the water. Do you do this sort of thing on purpose? What do you mean, Brie? Well, Miss Micha, you always seem to make an ass out of yourself. I can't figure out if you constantly do it because you want people to think you're an idiot, or it's just you're an idiot. Micha sputtered a bit in the water, trying to figure it out, but gave up and hoped that she had been the one to save him. It was an accident. Is it? She asked him. Yes, it was, Brie. The anger was building up and burbling around him, causing the water to bubble up. Despite being soaking wet, the fire and flames easily came to him and allowed him to push himself out of the water and sort of float above it. Well, it appears you may be able to tap into your magic after all, and not so useless, I guess. Good. We need to keep moving. But to where, Brie? We are lost in a cave-like system from what I can see from these flames. She was beginning to putter off in a direction, not responding to his question. He waited until she was almost gone from sight, and then had to stop, because he was the only thing casting light here. We go this way until we find out it isn't the way. Then we will try something else. Micha willed himself to follow along, and follow her as the heat from his hands kept him above the endless water that seemed to be below him. It took a few minutes following the path that Brie had set out for them until they arrived at a wall. It had a hole in it that was big enough for them to fit through, that looked to go somewhere, which was good, and was deep, though it quickly became a dark space and was hard to see. There was also some solid ground around this area, allowing them both to land, and Micha shake out his tired hands. Things were beginning to weigh heavily on him, with little chance to recuperate soon. Feeling the effects of your magic? Sadly, yes, I think. Not that I ever doubted you in the first place, that this stuff takes energy, and I just want to make that clear. Sure, it won't be that bad today, but tomorrow you won't be able to move much. Best to get through this quickly. A loud scream came from the hole that they'd found, with some sort of feminine yell of pain and anguish, though Micha remembered hearing lots of different screams from men while he was in prison a few years ago. They could scream like that if it came to it. It then fell silent, but the air then broke apart with another scream in a different tone. He took a step forward to go into this cave, and found his foot slipping, so he stopped to light his hands up again, and to get a sight of what was going on. A similar-looking black blood-like substance coated the ground here. "Do you recognize any of those voices, Brie?" "No, do you? And do you really want to go in there?" "Well, I think we have to. It's better to find out what's going on the other side. Besides, the royals might be in there, and isn't it your job to help protect them?" Technically yes and no, but I don't have a specific thing saying that I have to protect them." "But they gave you your position, so you have to pay them back by helping to protect them." "Yeah, kind of, Micha." He shook his head ruefully and took another step into this cave entranceway. Another heavy scream. Making him pause. It almost sounded familiar, but he couldn't quite place it. "Well, at least you're being honest about things. Most people would lie and tell whatever stories people want to hear," Micha said to her. "How do you know I'm telling the truth?" He looked back at her. "I've no idea at this point." He slipped and slid his feet along the ground and into the cavern to see what it would provide. The pathway was quick and short, leading them to a new cave that was well lit by several holes in the ceiling of the space. It also wasn't nearly as big in here as the previous room, and there was more of that blood-like substance covering much of everything. "Wow, there's a hole out here. We can get up and out of here and up and away, or do we explore this area to find out what those screams were?" Micha muttered out loud. "I think up might be a better option for us. We can see all the walls around here, and none of them appear to have an exit," Brie said in response. "What is this place, then, if it only leads to water? From the looks of this stuff all around us, another sacrifice chamber?" Brie offered questioningly. He did not like the sound of what Brie had to say, and involuntarily looked about the place further. What were they doing down here that needed all of this to happen? And who was doing it? And what were those screams from? "Do you think this is linked to the magic, or the whole appearance of magic?" Micha offered as the idea came to him. "Well, I certainly hope not, Micha. It would never feel right to tap into that power that I've been given ever again if that's the case. Hell, I'm shuddering even to think about it." "Well, we're probably going to have to find out one way or another, aren't we?" Magic returned to his hands, sending him towards one of the holes in the ceiling, with Brie quick to follow. Once through the hole, the two found themselves in a well-lit room, one that was designed to look like a throne room of sorts. It was not done up in the color of the royals that Micha knew, a red, white, and a teal blue. No, this was more of a burgundy and a garish bright yellow, followed with a more mellow yellow. I hate to keep repeating myself, but this is a place I've never been before, and it doesn't feel friendly in the least bit, Brie said. "Then what are we going to do? What shall we do?" There was a loud click of a door opening on the far side of the room, and they looked over to see it open, but no one appeared as the door swung fully open. "Well, that is creepy," Brie said upon seeing it. A hobble figure appeared bent over at the waist, its head looking at them from that awkward position of leaning all the way over. "You have been expected," this figure said. "Well, it keeps getting creepier and weirder, Brie. Thanks for pointing this out." "Yes, it does, Micha. Mr. Who is expecting us? Who are you?" The masters of the chambers. That sounds like it could be a lot of different people. Do you mean Vance and or Quad, or the king and the queen? Micha asked. I cannot tell you, for they haven't given me permission to do so, but if you follow me, you will find out shortly who they are. There are several of them, then, Brie piped in. That piece of information can be given out, yes, there are a couple of them. And they will tell us what is going on, Mr. Butler, sir, figure, helper, slave? The figure, who hadn't given its name, merely put their head down and backed back out of this space. Micha and Brie shared a look of distrust before they began heading for the door. A horror room of a bedroom that was well lit stood before them, with every piece of furniture, from the bed frames to the desks to the makeup table, all being made of bones. The crumpled man from before stood there along with the likes of Vance and Quad. There was a thumping noise coming from a bureau not far away that happened to be shaped to look like a coffin. Our lovely friends have finally arrived. Yes, Quad, now we can complete the whole process. Years of planning, Vance, for this moment, and we control it all. Oh, don't look so surprised by all of this, Micha. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Mr. Quad, but I don't find any of this the least bit surprising. The fact that you have royals locked up in a coffin or whatever you're doing, still unsurprising, but, it seems like the thing that you two would do at this point. Lord Vance snickers and walks over to the coffin-like bureau, putting his hand on the handle. It isn't opened right away, with Vance turning to grin at him. Are you sure you're ready for this? I guess, Vance. What is in there that is worth all of this effort? The answers and questions to more questions. Lord Quad's response made Micha give that man a quick look, and the one back to looking at Vance. There was a heavy creaking noise as this bureau was opened. Out of the way, the man hurried as the doors completely came open on their own, and then there was the sight that Micha wasn't ready for. 6 heads came rolling out, and came to a stop on the ground, about halfway between him and that bureau. And inside the bureau, which Micha noted, unconscious, was Aurora, surrounded by a light pool of blood. What the hell is that? So you are surprised by this. It is no surprise that he's surprised, Quad. That young man has no imagination and can't figure out much on his own. He had to get the witch to help him out. The two royals smirked to one another and looked to Micha and Brie again. Tell me you aren't doing what I think you're trying to do. That one is quick to catch on, isn't she, Quad? But our other associate still doesn't know that this whole thing was set up from the very beginning, Vance. Find a patsy, drag them along, and use a royal who you think might have really good magic to take over. That sound about right? The words came flying out of Micha's mouth. He wasn't sure where they came from, but it made sense to him in his head, and that was all that mattered. The sensation of heat and anger began rising up hotter than before. Oh, well, I guess we were both wrong on that, weren't we? Not worth wasting your breath saying that, Quad. These two will soon be gone and dead. True enough, Vance. If you don't mind, we need you to move things along nice and quickly. Step forward and meet your doom, your fates, or step backwards and meet your fate and doom. It in fact doesn't matter which direction you choose to step, but do step. Micha, though, wasn't paying attention to them, as his attention had shifted back to the heads, which were only a few feet away from him. Each of them looked familiar in their own way. Distracted, Mr. Micha? Or do you recognize all of those people despite yourself? Those 3, Lord Vance, were the ones you hired to do something for you. Not just for me, but for Quad, but yes, those that I had you send those 3 messages to when we first met. Yes, they were of course hired by me, and those other 3 were hired by Quad. A fine piece of work by both of us to set things in motion, Lord Quad added to Vance's statement. Taking over the country is setting things in motion, you two? Micha found himself questioning. I think they're referring to waking up the powers of a person is certainly trying to set things in motion, but the herbs would have been enough for most people. What are you two planning? Brie said, taking a step forward with a finger pointed out accusing them of wrongdoing. Sadly, those herbs were not enough for what we needed. It was a good alternate plan for things, wasn't it, Quad? Lord Quad gave a firm headshake yes to answer that question from Vance. None of this matters, and whatever you're trying to do needs to be stopped. Micha is right. This plan won't work if you're trying to use some other source of power and put it into a person. Well, if you follow us to the next room, then you see for yourself what is going on, Lord Quad offered with a giant smirk. It would be the last thing you two see, of course, but please take that in your mind. But, if you don't step, you're going to die, and if you do step, you're going to die. So, please, step through, Vance added to Quad's comments. With narrowed eyes, Micha studied the two, having listened to their little spiel for long enough. There was a time for listening and a time for doing. Now he reached for his magic, but then it suddenly felt strained and not there as it had been a moment ago. I don't think we will go then. After all, you told us not to move about, otherwise we would die, Micha said. Yes, by all means, stand there and rot from exhaustion and hunger, or find out what this is all about, a conundrum for you to chew on, Lord Quad said. The 2 lords had begun walking away, undisturbed by either Brie or Micha, their footsteps retreating towards the back of this bedroom area, where a different-looking bureau sat, though still made of bone. What are we going to do, Brie? You don't think very far ahead, do you? Yes, I try and think ahead, but I don't know what's going on. You seem to already have an idea of what they're up to. Only a few guesses, Micha. Well, do you care to fill me in on that? The 2 had remained firmly planted in their spots, not wanting to move much, fearing death. There are stories that somewhere around here is a power of the dark magic that was cracked open years, decades, ages ago. It's bleeding magic, but the stuff never actually manages to surface. And the plan is to use that to put it in Aurora over there? That would be my assumption, but at the same time, why would they leave her here if she's still alive and needed? It was a good question which he didn't have a good answer for, or any answer for. Micha found himself growling under his breath. If they went over to check on her, it might go bad, but if they didn't check on her, it still might go bad. I think we have to move. We could fly over there. First you didn't want to waste your magic, and now it's fine? She shrugged in response, as he shook his head and continued to talk. Is your magic doing okay, by the way? I reached for it earlier and it didn't feel all there. I think there was a moment of something, but it feels fine now. Maybe you used up more of your power than you thought? No. Like you said before, when it felt like you were getting pulled downward. This sort of feels similar, but I don't really have the energy, or something isn't there. Micha ended his statement rather confusedly. That, I take, isn't very good news at all. We need to get out of here if that is the case, since all of the stories say that any such thing that is down here is bad magic. He looked to her, wondering and hoping that she would explain what she meant further. Brie, though, took several fast steps directly towards Aurora. Are you sure about all of this? Of course not. Also, those two are still watching us and haven't left. Yes, we've been listening in. It is amusing to watch ants try to figure out how not to get squashed when you've already fallen deep into a well of problems and traps. Lord Quad was all too happy to crow. This was all too frustrating for Micha, who found himself charging forward and then after Brie. He wasn't going to stop her from doing what she was going to do, since she seemed to want to help. No, he was going over there because it was something to do, and he was angry and it allowed him to use up some energy. Is she alive? He asked as he arrived at her. Yes, still breathing and not sacrificed, though I think they still need her alive, so... To put all that magic power into her? I think that appears to be their plan. He turned to face the two lords, who stood there smirking at him in return. They looked like they'd already won some great victory, and now were waiting for the accolades to come pouring in. Your plan was the same as the young men, Otto, and so forth. Micha said this while pointing off to the other three heads on the ground. On a much grander scale, but yes. I guess you could offer that theory. Maybe, as Lord Vance says, maybe we want all of the power for ourselves and we're just using young Aurora as a vessel. It would be equally as useful, but we're not really going to tell you all of our plans, Lord Quad said. That isn't how magic works, and you two know better than that in the first place. Do we really, Brie? Yes, you do, Quad. This whole world has learned that once magic awakens, you can't put other powers in there as well. The horrible experiments done by some other governments has spread far and wide, even though they've been hushed up. It's why they have Aurora, Micha found himself saying. And people said you didn't know things, Micha. How quickly you do catch up when it's all placed in front of you. Magic power cannot necessarily travel to other magic users, then there's a chance it could be dropped into humans, regular ones, and then perhaps it can be moved over once again, Lord Vance said with a bit of a snicker. Micha was shaking his head. There still remains one matter, though. Us? Yes, as Brie says, us. What part are we playing in all of this? Lord Quad cleared his throat and pushed at the doors to the bureau he was by. They swung open, revealing that the space inside was hollow and had a room beyond. The same as most people who have fallen into our hands, Lord Quad specifies. We're here to clean things up, plus the more power returned to the stone, the better, Lord Vance then added. Brie had gone quite pale at the mention that Lord Vance saying that things could return to the power of the stone. You lot are fools. Oh, the witch speaks again, trying to correct us on what she claims to know. Honestly, I'm surprised you've survived as long as you have, witch. All of those rules you've made to separate yourself from the world, yet here you are. That gem, that stone, doesn't do what you think it does, Lord Quad. Carefully explain what it does, then, to us. Carefully explain what it does, then. Entertain us, Miss Brie? With wary eyes, they watched as Vance prowled about a bit away from Quad after saying this. His hands were held out as he was trying to present himself as unknowing in what was wrong. The glint in his eye told a different story, though. The stories about the stone say it is cursed to haunt the lands and not give away its powers. Any magic killed near it will only be taken in, but then dispersed again, because it's broken. No, we've found a way to get what we want out of this. All of this is no big deal to us. We've done our research. With all of this going on and Quad crooning about things, Micha found that the headache that was pounding at him was bothering him more and more. He had to sort all of this out, and his mind was going back to the old stories children told to one another. Something about an old horror story, but the details were scarce in his mind and not coming directly forward. Whatever books or people you talked to, they were only saying what you wanted to hear. And your books were better, which no one is going to lie to you about things and how they are. Why are you more trustworthy than our sources? Lord Vance said in a haughty tone. Of course they were more trustworthy, Vance. They let me talk to the old ones. But not the ones who started it all, the ones who know everything, who will solve all of this. Yes, as my associate Quad says, the ones who have been locked away in stone. They have told us everything. The comments by Quad and then Vance jogged Micha's memory enough to remember the old story he'd heard. There once was a wizard, all-powerful and mighty. His detractors hated him as he ruled the world. To show him what they were capable of, they entombed the powerful wizard, living inside of a gem to hide it away and to make people happy and to give them their freedom. You cannot seriously think that those old stories are true, gentlemen. They're fairy tales. Why not, Micha? What harm is there in discovering the stone that supposedly doesn't exist? Does it, Brie? If it does, Vance, it would not be in the catacombs below the castle. Why not, Witch? It's the perfect place for it. And why do you think the royals moved the capital city here? What other reason could one want but access to the old powers of the old eons? Lord Quad stepped through to the next room after saying this, as Vance looked back at his companion. Once the other lord realized what was going on, he too backed towards the bureau door. They are stories, not truths, Brie yelled after them. Yes, there's only one way to find out, and you will have to follow us. With that, Vance hurried and ran into the door, slipping through. Micha took a few steps forward to chase after them, but paused when he glanced over towards Brie. She remained where she was, half holding Aurora and trying to pull her out. She has to come with us, right? He asked. Yes, help me. He took a few steps over to there, and they both lifted and carried Aurora out, and then over towards the doorway in the bureau. Micha regarded it carefully. I get a bad feeling about all of this. Good, she replied. It would be bad to feel good about it. We would wind up charging into some weird trap and not being ready for anything. Both found themselves wincing as they stepped across the landing, a searing pain clawing at them and at their skin. An eerie glow came over the room as they walked into it, a red-purple hue of it that colored the entirety of it, along with anyone who stepped inside. The center of the room was dominated by a rock or gem of the same sort of color that jutted down from the high ceiling above, almost touching down to the ground. If only for a moment, swore that he could see what looked to be a figure swimming in that stone. It was there and then gone there before he could even blink. You really found a stone that has magic in it. Oh, do not look so surprised, Witch. Your work helped us along the way, even if you didn't know it. Granted, it was only you becoming a witch of the dreaded royals that confirmed things for us. The cockiness of Quad's voice annoyed Micha, who decided to grab Brie's shoulder while still holding on to Aurora. It wasn't an easy task as she was mesmerized by the stone, lost in its color. There is no reason to be surprised by any of this, nor is there a reason to believe that it is the right thing to be doing, Micha said, trying to distract for a moment. One of the world's newest magic users, and he's a non-believer. Can you believe this, Quad? He might not be as powerful then as we were led to believe by this witch and everyone around him. No! The witch had snapped out of her stupor and glared at the two royals. Back to your feisty self, I see. Pity, the stone would have welcomed you. Quad growled back. No one is going into that stone, dead or alive. Just stop this madness. The two men began to snicker, then laugh out loud, lost in their laughter at Micha's comment. It became so heavy that the two had even doubled over. The stone has taken over their minds, Micha. We have to do something, she said. Then it isn't the right one, is it? The witch turned to him, a puzzled expression on her face, at his defiance. He was glaring at the gem now. What are you saying? You saw a figure like I did, right? The old stories say a gem. This, to me, looks more like a poisoned rock, cursed by something inside it, pretending to be what these two want, Micha announced, though he didn't sound totally sure of himself. Not according to the stories I've read and the dead people I've talked to, Micha. It is what we're looking for. I don't know. We need to figure out what it is and isn't quickly, though, Brie. I don't think that thing is going to stay a rock for very long. Micha points, now that the two men had stopped their laughter, and picked up two pickaxes. The rock was close enough to the ground, and to them, that they could easily and freely swing their weapons at it. Maybe it isn't a gem as you say, Micha. After all, they're using tools that would break rocks, not gems. And a cursed gem of magic, well, that would not break apart easily. Maybe they might not be able to break it, but they do want to sacrifice us. That may be how they do it. Break it a little bit so that whatever inside grabs out and grabs us, Micha wildly postulated. The clink of the picks hitting the gem or stone made the two pause and look over. Cracks were now appearing all over this thing, all the way beyond where they could see. Sacrifices do not work like this, though, Brie said. Does it matter if it works or not? Something is about to happen. There was a crinkle and a shatter of glass that began to echo about the room. It was followed by a heavy flash of white light. Brie threw her hands up before herself. A wisp of some sort of shield flew up to protect the three of them, and the light only lasted a moment before Micha could see again. There was a dark, shadowy figure that stood next to the two men, Quad and Vance, a grin crossing its face as it opened its massive jaw. It then swallowed up Vance, making his figure vanish, with Quad quick to follow suit. The creature then looked to them, frowned, and jumped back into this destroyed rock gem thing. Quiet fell over the room as Aurora groaned to life in Micha's arms. What was that, and what happened? Micha said once he'd gathered his wits. That was the rock's master destroying those that summoned it. Micha spun about to see the queen strolling up, holding up some sort of thing in her hands. It glinted like gold, but he could only stare and guess as to what it was. Thank you for your help. Those two will now be forever gone, the king said, strolling up behind his wife. This was all planned by you two? Brie let go of her shield in the front of her, sending a wave of energy before her. With that accomplished, she then turned to face the king and queen to glare at them. No, we are not that good. We suspected a few things and watched from afar to see what was going on. Then we let it all play out. Micha felt himself sneering at that. He didn't like being used and thrown out with the trash. Never mind the fact that he considered himself trash and was only a street person. It still didn't feel right. Well, you got what you wanted. Now where is the exit out of here, please? Micha asked. Are you leaving so soon, Mr. Micha? King Horus replied. Yes, I don't belong here, King, and I'm better off never being around this weird place anymore. Is that so? Yes, it is, Queen. Then I have some unfortunate news for you. Since you did so well with this little assignment, we want to keep you around. The king cleared his throat and added to the queen's comment. The streets, you know, will have turned against you, as you yourself have pointed out before. They know you worked for us, and they don't want to deal with a person like that. Micha found himself glowering at each of them. What do you even want from me? To track down the creature in the rock. It's gone from this one, but I'm sure there are others out there. But they'll be back to corrupting other things and to trying to get power and eating magic. Those two, Vance and Quad, weren't exactly all powerful, but they were enough to satiate the demon, we believe, for now. But they will soon pop up. The queen offered. I didn't really do anything, though. I merely ran around while being chased by many people who demanded that I tell them something. Yes, that may have exactly happened, but you also got the results we wanted. A curse in this area is gone, and it will not return at least for a while. What curses are you talking about, King Horus? Micha asked desperately for a straight answer that he could understand. The ones that allow magic to flow to people. It is a boon and a curse to have abilities, and it will only cause further problems for people who do and do not have power. We need you to find out more about what's going on. Micha looks over to the queen, and then back to the king, shaking his head. This was all too much for him. It made no sense that they would want him for such a job. They had a perfectly good witch, who was probably more capable than he, and the look they were giving him made his thoughts trail away. Said he didn't really have much choice in the matter. Instead of responding right away, though, he shifted Aurora so that she was more comfortably leaning against his shoulder. Oh, what's going on? Where am I? In an underground chamber, Aurora. And, Miss Aurora, we'll have to go with you on these cases. Why would you want that, Queen? And that would be her choice if she wants to or not. Also, I haven't said yes yet. No, Aurora does not have a choice, Micha. There are things going on at the castle that she will need to get away from, at least for a while. Yes, as my husband points out, your task is now to go to the town of Braintree and see what you can find. Good luck. The two royals turned and just walked away, with Brie following them. Micha continued holding up Aurora as best he could, watching them go and shaking his head, figuring that he was now trapped in a world that he wanted no part of. End of Part 11 of Tangled in a Criminal World. The end of Tangled in a Criminal World. Thank you for listening.